Welcome to Special Education Funding Made Easy in Kansas, brought to you by the 802. We have a federal law in the United States that requires all states to pay 92% of the excess cost of providing a student with special education services. Excess cost is figured as the additional cost to provide an education to a student with disabilities over the cost of providing an education for a student who has no identifiable disabilities. So our states are all required to pay 92% of that excess cost. How does that work in Kansas? Well, in Kansas, our legislature every year sets aside a pot of money, and out of that for special education, and out of that pot of money comes catastrophic aid, Medicaid replacement, transportation, and categorical aid. Catastrophic aid, what is that? Districts have to apply for catastrophic aid, and that is exactly what it sounds like. They have had some kind of a financial catastrophic event with a student who needs more services than they are able to provide them. They can apply to get additional funding. A lot of time the kids that qualify for catastrophic aid need to go for additional schooling, maybe at the School of the Deaf or the School of the Blind or the Heartstrings location in Wichita that works with students with multiple disabilities. Or they may need some kind of equipment that is expensive, so they can apply for that catastrophic aid. Medicaid replacement is based on the number of special education students who have been approved for Medicaid in Kansas. So basically, you're talking about money that is provided to the school district for our special education students who receive their health care through CanCare in Kansas. Then there's also transportation and categorical aid. And we're going to talk a little bit about categorical aid later. So let's look at my example. In my example, we have a pot of money of $10 million for special education in Kansas. Now, please understand that it is much, much more than that every year, but I like simple math. So we start with $10 million in the pot. We pay for our special education students' transportation. That comes off the $10 million. That's $1 million in my example. We pay any catastrophic events out of this pot of money, and in my example that's $2 million. And then we pay for the Medicaid replacement, which in my example is $1.5 million. That leaves us $5.5 million for what's called categorical aid. So how does categorical aid work? Sometimes we call it cat aid. What we do is we take the total number of the full-time equivalency of special education teachers in the state, and we add to that 40% of the full-time paraprofessionals in special education that we have in our state to come up with a total number of professionals we have working with our special education students. So, furthering my example, let's say that in the state of Kansas we have 187.7 full-time special education teachers, and we have 16 full-time paraprofessionals working with special education students. Now, if you look over here, you can see that we really have 40 paraprofessionals, but we're only going to fund that at 40%. So 40 FTE times 40% gives us 16 paraprofessionals that will be funded. The total then for categorical aid is 203.7 staff members. We take the $5.5 million and we divide it by the number of staff eligible for categorical aid, and we come up with a number that is about $27,000. So what that means is that for every teacher, paraprofessional that qualify, you will see, well, for every teacher, you will see, your district will see $27,000 in special ed funding, and the district will get 40% of that, $27,000 for their paraprofessionals. So, drilling down a little farther, let's say that your district has 8 staff people that work in special education. So we take the 8 staff people times the $27,000 and we get a categorical aid reimbursement of $216,000 from the state. Sounds like a lot of money. But if your district does the right thing and pays their teachers a living salary, then they are paying at least the average teacher salary in Kansas. And the average teacher salary in Kansas last year was a little over $53,000. So while the district is getting $216,000 from the state, those teachers are costing the district just in salary $424,000. So you take the $424,000, you subtract the categorical aid of $216,000, and you find out that your district is $208,000 short in special ed funding. And that's because the state of Kansas only pays 71% of the excess cost of educating a special education student instead of the required 92%. So your district ends up short in their special ed fund. Well, how does the district make up for that shortfall? Currently in Kansas, we are fully funding our school finance law, but districts don't have the opportunity to spend all of that money because the state does not fully fund the special education portion of the budget. So a district then has to determine how much are they going to be short in special education, and they will take and make a transfer from their general fund into the special ed fund. And that money that was in the general fund is school finance money that was supposed to be used for something else, but it had to go to pay the special ed bills. And every year there's going to be about a 20% shortfall for districts in their excess cost of special education because we do not fully fund our special education funding. So what could that money in the general fund have been used for instead of being transferred over into special education to help pay those bills? Well, that money could have been used to hire more teachers. More teachers would have created smaller classrooms. We could have hired more mental health providers that are actually in the buildings. We could have hired more school nurses. There could have been pay raises for all of our staff. So that is a loss to our district because we are not fully funding special education. So what can you do about that? You need to contact your legislator and you need to tell them that you expect them to fully fund special education. If you're not sure how to get a hold of your legislator, contact us here at the 802 and we would be glad to assist you. Thanks for listening to our shortened version of special education funding in Kansas.